Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the Famvestor podcast. I am your host, Sunny Burns.
And I am your co-host, Sunmarie Burns. So today, we're going to be talking about how Sunny acquired 19 cars by the age of 24. We thought that'd be a suitable topic for our 19th episode of the show. We'll be talking about all 19 of those cars.
Right. Two of which we still drive today, our Honda Fit, 2009 Honda Fit, and 2009 Toyota Yaris.
Mm-hmm.
Great cars. We haven't had to do almost anything to them in the 5 or 6 years we've owned them now, and put like 100,000 miles on them each, so...
And it's a very interesting story about side hustling, finding alternative modes of bringing in income, being creative with what you can do to earn a little extra. And it's a fascinating story of how he got involved in flipping cars to begin with.
Right. That's what funded my tuition for the first 2 years of college. And I also want to talk about what my ideal like A to B car is that's going to give you the most bang for buck and last you the longest with the least amount of maintenance. So I want to get into that because I think it's something great I kind of picked up and learned along the way as I was buying all these cars.
So we hope you'll enjoy today's show. Without further ado, let's get the show started.
Well, actually, before we start, I did want to give some updates because life has been pretty hectic these last couple of weeks. And, you know, we've been doing a lot of things. Our Airbnb is finally, well, not complete, but almost there.
Soft opening. We have our first guest staying. Actually, our guest from episode 11, Dustin Heiner, and his family, his 4 kids, and his wife are staying in the Airbnb right now. So they're doing a dry run for us, telling us how the experience, the futons and the Japanese vibe is. So yeah, we're excited to have a full launch of it. And we'll keep you updated. You know, I'm sure we'll have a blog post on the whole process of starting an Airbnb, what the money looks like, is it worthwhile, what cleaning and the headaches of that is. So excited to dig into that. But also excited just to have a space of our own where, you know, we live in a pretty small home here, so it's hard to invite people. But now we have that space where we can invite people over and, extra bonus family room and all-purpose space.
Right. Mm-hmm. So definitely exciting there.
Yeah. Big add to our life.
Right, right. And for those that are local, we have a meetup tomorrow. Actually, this is going to air on Thursday. So yesterday we had our meetup. I'm sure it was great. What else we got going on, Sunmarie? Yeah, I feel like life has been crazy. Oh, so I'm practicing for a marathon running in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So 2 days ago, I ran all the way from my house here all the way to New York City. So from my house in Garfield to New York City. And the week before that, so New York City and back, that was about 21 miles. And then the week before that, I ran from our 4 family here to our 3 family in North Arlington to our 4 family in Lyndhurst. So I did this circuit of all the rental properties. And then to my parents' house in Moonachie.
And that was 18 miles, right?
That was around 18 and a half miles, yeah. So been training hard for this marathon. Anyway.
Only 1 week away?
1 week, 1.5 weeks away, yeah. And it's crazy because the day before is going to be my brother's wedding. So it's going to be interesting. Wedding, then marathon. And then the entire week before, we're at FinCon in Washington, D.C. So lots going on.
That's right.
Anyway.
Life's exciting.
Life is exciting. And we got to go camping last weekend. So that was cool. Brought some friends over. Sandy Hook National Campground, the only national campground in New Jersey. We got to see dolphins. I got to see shooting stars. It was nice. Kids really enjoyed it.
Yep. Always good to get out in nature.
Right. So no matter how busy you are, you know, always make time for those important moments with the family. And yeah, I don't know. We've been rocking and rolling, but I'm good for some downtime coming up soon. Mm-hmm. Anyway, without further ado, enough chit-chat. Let's get to the show.
You're listening to the Famvestor podcast. If you're looking to raise your family with intention, gain financial independence, and live a life of true freedom, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore together how to create thriving families, because strong families are the cornerstone for a world at peace.
So welcome back, everyone. Before we dive into the show, there was one last thing I wanted to do. We're at 95 ratings on iTunes, and we told everyone, if you leave us a review, we'll give you a shout out. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to Frantoni777. Thanks for the great review left for us. You said, great if you have a family of your own. I thought the podcasts were really strong in their balance of family life and values and their commitment to financial freedom. So Frantoni, thank you so much for leaving that review. And we can't wait for the next 5 reviewers. So remember, if you are within the next 5 reviews, we will give you a shout out the next episode. So definitely hop on iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and we can't wait to read them. So with that, Sunmi, you want to start us off with the show? Sunmi's going to be interviewing me today.
Yes. So intriguing topic, 19 cars by the age of 24. So I think to start us off, what I'm curious about is, how did you get the idea to start investing in and flipping cars?
Right. So I think the idea was born like years and years ago. My dad would actually, we went to this Japanese supermarket and they would have this board with all these ads for cars, and all these Japanese workers would, work here kind of on a year rotation or whatever. And then after a year, they'd leave. And when they left, they had these cars, and they would just sell them really cheap, really nice, well-maintained cars sold for, a quarter of the price they were worth. And my dad saw the value there, and he did this like 3 or 4 times growing up. And so I guess that seed was planted in my head from that. Like, he didn't go crazy with it, but every once in a while, once every 2 years or so, he found a good deal and he would do it. And that seed was planted. But then when I was 17 years old, I wanted transportation. And, I didn't buy a car because I knew it wasn't a car expense, but it was car insurance was so expensive. My dad wasn't going to let me hop on his plan. So it was going to be $2,000 a year for me to have car insurance. So I was like, I can't get a car. But
That's a lot when you're 17 years old.
Right. But I wanted to get a motorcycle. And so, I ended up buying a 2001 Ninja 500R, bought it for $2,000, I believe. And I searched for like 3 or 4 weeks looking for a good deal on a car. On a motorcycle. And the reason I bought the motorcycle, sorry, just to circle back, is because motorcycle insurance for me at 17 years old was only $300 a year.
That's a big savings.
A big savings from $2,000. So if anyone's interested, motorcycles are dangerous, but there are significant savings there. You'll get 50 miles per gallon. You're paying, a sixth of the price for insurance. So very reasonable. And that $300 a year went down to like $126 when I was done after 3 or 4 years with the motorcycle.
When you were over a certain age,
a certain age and just experience, and then the motorcycle insurance just went down. But so what inspired me was I bought this motorcycle. It was purple at the time, a purple Kawasaki Ninja 500. I painted it all white. If you're viewing the YouTube video, you can see some pictures of it. There's some cool things. I was stenciling some graphics I made with a Sharpie. But what was cool is I bought it for $2,000, but I knew next day if I just listed it, I could sell it for $2,500 because it was a good deal. And I just went over there and I picked it up, and I knew that there was so much profit margin that I could have if I just turned around and sold it the next day. And that got my mind churning, like, hey, I can do this for a living. I can buy cheap motorcycles and sell them for higher, or do it with cars, because there's so much more cars than there are motorcycles. So that's where the idea kind of got conceived.
So your first vehicle you purchased at the age of 17 was a motorcycle.
A motorcycle. And the way I got the funds for that motorcycle is I fundraised with glow sticks on 4th of July. I bought these bulk packs of 100 packs of these glow sticks bracelets. I bought them like $10 for a 100 pack. And then I would fundraise at firework events, $1 a piece for the glow sticks. And I worked as a custodian at my high school during the summer.
That is a bold and gutsy way of raising money. Selling glow sticks. You've got to be...
It was good.
You've got to be quite outgoing and entrepreneurial for that kind of adventure. So what made you make the shift over to cars, and how old were you when you bought your first official car? Did you drive it? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I needed capital because all my funds kind of went to the motorcycle, and I didn't really have any money to buy another vehicle. And again, there's only so many motorcycles, but there's plenty of cars. So the idea was just, cars were plentiful, so let me just search for that. And every single one of these 19 cars that I bought were off Craigslist. All except one. One was eBay, but everything else, 18 cars I bought off Craigslist and I sold off Craigslist. And it was just buying low and selling high. And so I had this plan. I was a senior in high school, and I was like, hey, I need to start making money for college because my dad's not going to pay for any of it. So what am I going to do? So I started applying for jobs, and I actually ended up getting a job at Taco Bell. And I start working at Taco Bell, and I have this idea. I'm just starting this job to raise enough capital to buy my first car. And I'm going to flip that car and use the profits to buy more cars, and then eventually start making enough money to start paying tuition for college. So that's where the idea was conceived.
So seed money for your future ventures.
Right.
Okay, so you worked at Taco Bell. How long did you end up working at Taco Bell before you hit that magic number? How did you know how much you should spend and wanted to spend on your first car?
Right. So I guess the whole time, I was searching deals on Craigslist just as they would come up. I would verify using Kelley Blue Book, what the price should be and what they were selling at, and I would look for those margins. Kelley Blue Book says it's worth $2,000, but this guy's only selling it for $1,000. There's 100% profit margin on this one. So I would just doing research, learning about the system, learning what cars were good and what cars weren't. I had a bias towards Japanese cars. I just grew up with them. My dad was always like, Japanese cars are super reliable. Even with high mileage, old cars, they'll last forever. So that was my game plan. Stick to Japanese. And I believe that to this day, Japanese cars will last a long time. But so I worked at Taco Bell for 6 months, and that was the goal. Work 6 months and then start the car flipping business. And, I gave my 2 weeks notice as 6 months was coming up. And the day I quit, my last day of work was the first day I bought my first car.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Okay. So it worked out quite well.
So tell us about this first car you bought. What was it? How old was it? What kind of miles? And how'd you go about acquiring it?
Okay, so my first car was a 1999 Mitsubishi Mirage, and I bought it for $1,390.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, it was a good deal, especially at the time. This car was maybe 10 years old at the time. Does that make sense? Yeah, about 10 years old. It was probably around 2009. I graduated high school in 2008, so it was 2008, 2009. So about 10 years old, and I bought it for $1,390. He had it listed for $1,650, but I negotiated him down. And yeah, what was the question, Miss Interviewee?
How'd you acquire it? I guess you said earlier you found all your cars on Craigslist. So.
Right. So I just found it on Craigslist. It was a good deal. I had to drive a while for it. It was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So I had to drive all the way down there. It was about 45 minutes for me to get there. I think, what did I do? I think I went with my motorcycle. No, I'm trying to remember. Maybe I went with my dad. And, I came with cash, and I just went with him, and I was like, hey, I'll buy this car. Will you take $1,390 instead of $1,650 you have listed? Or I think I did a lower number. I think I said $1,250, and then he met me at $1,390, and that's where we settled on. But the funny thing with this car is its inspection was expired. So in New Jersey, you have to have your car inspected every 2 years. And I was like, hey, before I buy this car, can we just go to the DMV? I looked it up. It's 15 minutes away. Let's go together. And the owner was actually okay with it. So we both went to the DMV together. He got it inspected. So I had a clean 2-year bill of health on the car, clean inspection.
Nice.
And didn't have to worry about that. And, I gave him the cash. He gave me the title. And we were good from there.
Wow, okay. So you bought this car for $1,390. How long did you own it? Did you do any repairs to it? And how soon did you decide to relist it?
Right, so I relisted it, I think 2 weeks later, and
quick turnaround.
Yeah, I didn't do much to it. I gave it a good car wash. I kind of vacuumed it, detailed it a little bit. The emblem was missing in the front, the Mitsubishi logo. So I just bought one off eBay. I stuck that on there. I think I changed the spark plug, changed the oil. Nothing big, nothing major. And then just relisted it. And I relisted it for double what I bought it for, over double. and I ended up getting that. So I think 2 weeks later, I instead of at 1390, I got 2,800 for it. Actually, I have the exact records here. So I got 2,850 for it. So 1,400 in profit. That's over 100% profit.
Amazing.
In about 12 days.
So you essentially doubled your seed money in 2 weeks. You'd work 6 months, hour for $1,
Right.
$1 for hour.
To save that $1,500 about.
And then in another 2 weeks.
I think maybe I had $2,000.
In another 2 weeks,
I doubled
you
it.
doubled it.
Yes.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And
Now, you said you did an oil change and you changed spark plugs. This is your first vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
You're fresh out of high school. How'd you know how to do it? Did you have any previous experience repairing cars, or you just went at it? How did you do that? Or did you pay someone to get it done?
Right. So I had a moped early on, and then I got the motorcycle. So I just started learning about, how to change spark plugs, how to change oil from those, because it's kind of very easy to do with motorcycles. And then with YouTube, YouTube was pretty big back then still. So I would just YouTube, that specific car, how to do the oil change, how to do the spark plugs, and usually I could find that.
Amazing. So
really
you
just
self-taught yourself how to do these
Right.
basic car
Right.
upkeep.
Yeah. And I only put
procedures.
$60 into this car. So that was the emblem and the oil changes and the spark plugs.
Wow. Well, that's inspiring. Definitely something that for a first-time flip is motivational to keep going. So how soon after that did you purchase your next car?
Yeah, I think 5 days after I sold that one, I bought my next car, which was a 97 Honda Civic. That one wasn't that great. Because I bought it for $1,500. It had a cracked windshield, so I had the windshield replaced.
That's expensive.
Right, and it also had high mileage. This thing had 244,000 miles on it. But, I thought people like Honda Civics. It'll sell. I did a profit on it. I think I made like $565, it says. But it took me forever to sell. And that was because of the high mileage, and it was a stick car. So after that purchase, I was like, no more stick cars. The market, is instead of 90% up of the population, only 10% were looking for stick cars. So I was like, no more stick cars. I profited, but it took me, 2 months to sell it. So it was like, there was a lot of lessons learned. Don't buy anything, over like 160,000 miles. I want 140,000 or less, and don't buy stick.
Manual cars are a tough market. Mm-hmm.
So, but then the next deal, right after I sold that car, 8 days later, I bought the next one. And that was my quickest turnaround. I bought that car. 5 days later, I had it sold at 200% profit, almost 200% profit, 195%. So I bought it for $734. No, sorry, $700. I put $34 into it, and I sold it for triple, $2,100.
Wow.
So, and that was in a matter of 5 days. And again, I didn't do anything to this car except vacuum it, clean it. I think that's it. I don't think I even changed spark plugs or gave it an oil. Maybe I gave it an oil change. Spent $34, whatever that was. And it was just that, this owner had bought a brand new car and was like, hey, I just want to get rid of this car. So she listed it real quick for $700. I even tried to haggle, but she was like, no, there's so many calls. You're the first one to come here. You can take it or leave it. And so I gave her the $700 and I was able to sell it 5 days later because it was worth so much more, but she just didn't want to bother looking up the KBB or selling it and just wants to get rid of it.
Amazing.
Right.
Okay.
So that was my quickest turnaround.
So did you ever buy more than one vehicle at the same time? Did you ever have a couple vehicles that you had listed simultaneously, or you always do one vehicle, sell it, and then look for your next?
Right. It was always tempting to keep expanding. I was getting more profit. I had, higher capital that I could do multiple deals at once. But I guess, that second deal kind of scared me a little bit, and I'm always been risk adverse, although it doesn't sound like it. So I stuck to just one car at a time. I didn't want to have two cars and then something go wrong with the one and then not have any funding to repair it because all my money was in cars. So I just did one at a time, and sure, yeah, that limited my growth, but it kept me feeling secure and like a focus. I just focus on selling this one car, or buying that one car at a time.
I think that's a wise choice, especially when your funds are low, to not
spread yourself too thin.
Spread yourself too thin, exactly.
And be able to take any, mishaps. Maybe the engine blows or something. You never know what's going to happen.
Or you never know if the car you bought will be a lemon or
Right.
cost more to repair than you think. So, yeah, that's wise. So you continued on this journey. You know, I think we're at car
5
at this point.
which was another Nissan Altima.
So, tell us some more about these cars.
Yeah, so every single one of my cars was Japanese except for one Korean car, a Hyundai Elantra. That one took a while to sell too, just because people didn't want the Hyundais when they were the older models.
Less dependable.
Less dependable. I started going for more of the, I guess, not higher end, but newer cars with lower mileage towards the end. But basically everything, you know, the average car I bought was like $1,000. Or, sorry, average cost of the car I bought was like $2,200. And the average profit I made per car was $1,000. So pretty good, but honestly, it was a lot of work because I would have to scan Craigslist constantly. I'd have to be ready to move at a moment's notice. You know, if I saw a good deal, you have to be first one on the scene, first one with cash, and the cash is negotiating power. And you have to be able to tell like the owner, you know, hey, I'm going to get rid of this problem for you. You have this car that you want to get rid of. I'm here. I have cash. I can get rid of it quickly. And let's make this deal happen.
Right.
And that's how I was able to negotiate them down, get really good deals, and just do it quickly and efficiently, being the first one on the scene.
So you started investing in cars at age 19, and you sold a total of 19 cars by the time you were 24. So we're talking a 5-year time span there where you've purchased 19 cars. What was your total profit over that 5 years from doing this business?
Okay, so over 5 years, so again, the average profit was 1,020 bucks. So just multiply that by the 19 cars, so that's $19,000.
Wow. That is a good little side job for sure. And it didn't require a lot of your time. You're not working an 8-hour day to acquire that kind of money. And so what kind of tips do you have for someone who might be interested in getting into this business?
So I guess my advice for getting started in this business would be, you know, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. You know, you do have to put in the effort. You have to look at these ads, and you have to start learning. So I guess the first step is learning the market, you know, learning what a good deal looks like, you know, having the Kelley Blue Book open, and then looking what the deals are that come in, and then being able to recognize there's a lot of scams that go through Craigslist, you know, just fake listings. And I guess they have you like wire them money, and they're like, oh, it's in the freight car and it'll be shipped to you, and I can't do it because I'm deployed or something like that. There'll be some scam. So recognizing those scams and just, you know, doing away with it as quickly as possible. I never bought from a dealer just because I felt like, you know, dealers know what this car is worth. If it's underpriced, there's probably something wrong with it. So I always stuck to just private sellers because I was looking for those private sellers that, you know, just didn't care about, you know, making $1,000 more. They just wanted to get rid of it as quickly as possible. That's who my primary target was. And I loved original owners because original owners, you know, they were with the car since it was brand new, when it was, you know, just the most precious car they had, and they really took care of it. Original owners always seem to take care of the cars better than a second owner, a third owner.
They have that pride and ownership. To them, it's a new car no matter how old it is.
Right, and they had it since the beginning, and they know there was a lot of worth to them from it. You know, it's a $15,000, $25,000 car for them. They didn't buy it at $5,000 and not care about it.
That's a good tip.
Right. And then, so there was always like these questions, you know, I would scan listings as they came out. And I would also recommend now using like something like ifttt.com, where you can set up, actually Craigslist now has built in alerts for certain search criteria. So I would probably build that in and then just have those emailed to me. I would also use things like Facebook Marketplace now.
Right, that's a new platform that didn't exist previously.
Right, so I'd recommend that. So really learning your market, and then just having some knowledge of how to test cars. So there's a great YouTube video on how to test cars from Eric the Car Guy, and he just shows you, you know, his routine for taking a car for its first on-the-road ride, and testing out, you know, all the different aspects of the car. The suspension, does the wheel bearing start whirring after a certain miles per hour? And I would always recommend, don't just take the car around the block. go on the highway, because you will hear things and things will change. You know, the steering wheel might start rumbling. Always go on the highway. Don't just take it for a spin around the block, because you never know.
Gotta test it out at the higher speeds.
Right. And I would be in there, you know, take a 15 to 20 minute ride. Don't just take a 5-minute ride. You will miss certain things. And, you know, turn down the radio, open the windows, listen. You can always hear a lot of things. You can hear some rattling or something will pop up. So take a spin with the car with the windows down, sound off, and just take a good long time to get a feel for the car. Because you never know, maybe you'll feel something with the transmission and the fifth gear, or you'll, like I said, you know, at higher speeds, the steering wheel might rumble, or, you know, heat shield might rattle if you have the windows down, things like that you'll pick up just by driving the car.
Right. I know those little details can get easily overlooked.
Yes.
I remember driving a car with my family growing up, and we bought one and then didn't discover until we got home that the back windows actually didn't go up and down.
Right. So
but we didn't test them.
Things.
We tested the front windows, you know, but we didn't test the back windows. The trunk didn't open either. Another big one.
Gas tank.
You got to test these things.
Yeah.
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 So that's a good tip.
Yeah. So just take your time with the purchase. Questions I always ask are, you know, are you the original owner? Anything wrong with the car? Has the timing belt been changed? Do you have? So I like to definitely recommend buying cars with timing chains, because you don't have to worry about the timing belt. So that's something I look for. Ask, do you have maintenance records? If they have maintenance records, that's a very good sign. Even if they're not the single owner, that means, you know, they have some pride of ownership there. They kept meticulous records. That's always a good thing. I ask, is there any mechanical or cosmetic damage on the car? I ask if the inspection is current. If the inspection is expired, usually that's a bad sign. Not always. Sometimes the owner just isn't on top of things, but usually it means the car hasn't been taken care of that well.
Or maybe hasn't even been driven for a while.
Right, which isn't a good thing either. I ask, why are you selling the vehicle? And I ask, is the price negotiable? So those are kind of the list of questions I ask. And for those who want to read the blog, I have most of this there, faninvestor.com/cars, where I talk about all this. I have my questions. I have all that information there.
Okay. So a lot of good advice there, a lot of good tips for someone to get started, to just know how to present themselves when they show up.
And when you actually show up, what I always bring with me is cash, spare license plates, a screwdriver, pliers, a flashlight, zip ties, Easy Pass, walkie-talkies, and an additional driver. So a lot of times my dad would actually come out with me and be the driver to drive the vehicle we drove in with back home. And I would use the spare license plates to bring the car home, or I'd ask the owner to see if he was okay to drive the car to my house and leave the car in my driveway.
So depending on the distance, that would be a big help.
And bring a screwdriver to take off the old license plates, and zip ties in case those old rusty screws break off and you just need to latch it on real quick.
That's a good tip.
And Easy Pass so you don't get snagged with tolls. And two pairs of Easy Pass, one for your current car you took there and the other one. And then walkie-talkies just to communicate between the two cars as you're driving.
Okay. All right. So you said cash over, I guess, check. Have you tried both methods and found that cash is more effective, or what's the logic there?
Well, I don't think people would trust a check. You know, you're a private seller, you guys are meeting at their house or whatever, and you come up with a check. I don't think people would trust it. Cash is always king. You know, people love cash. You flash, you know, cash with them, and they know, like, oh, I can just take this cash. I hand them the keys, and my deal is done. My headaches are gone. Let's make this happen. And such a big negotiating power comes with dealing with cash.
You know, for some people, negotiating is actually a challenging thing or something that they're not really accustomed to. Any tips there? Like, what are your negotiating methods?
Right. So a couple tips is, let's say a car is listed for $2,000. I would always bring, like, I would have an idea of, like, what's going to be my lowest price. And, like, maybe it'd be $1,500. So I'd put $1,500 in one pocket and the rest of the $500 in another pocket. And I'd be like, hey, you know, I like the car. Everything looks good. I wouldn't try to downplay the car so much. If there was, like, obvious errors or issues, I would point them out, but I wouldn't try to like, nitpick or tire kick them. I'd be like, hey, this is a beautiful car, great car, but is there any way you would take $1,500 for this car? I'd take out the cash from my pocket and say, hey, I can buy this right now. Would you take $1,500? And so often, even though it was like, 25% off, $500 off the car, he would say sure, or they would think about it and maybe they'd haggle a little bit, but they would take a much lower price. And then the reason I'd say keep two separate amounts in one pocket is you don't want to like say, hey, would you take $1,500 and then take away a couple hundreds from that stack of 2,000 you had, right? And then they feel bad that I could have gotten more. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I like the two pocket method.
That's a good advice. It kind of is respectful to the seller too.
But I say always negotiate, because I feel like if you don't negotiate and then the seller thinks, oh, I should have listed it for more, But if you negotiate, they feel like, oh, I won this, and I got as much as I should have gotten for this. So I think both sides feel good when negotiations happen. So I say always negotiate.
Have you ever walked away from a deal?
I have, yes. Just some cars I knew weren't worth the effort. It was going to need way too much work, way too much of my time, and I wasn't in it for, trading those hours for dollars. I wanted something quick and easy, so I would just walk away if it was like I would hear noises that I didn't understand or things like that.
All right, great tips so far. I'm really gaining a lot from this.
Are you?
I am. I don't, I know that you did this business, but honestly, I didn't really, know too much of the details. So yes, I am learning quite a bit actually, because most of this happened before I even met you.
This is true.
You did teach me how to buy my own cars, but yeah. Now
well,
I'm learning all the reasoning.
You didn't listen.
Hey,
I told you.
I learned after my first car to listen to you, because I bought a bad first car.
And what was it, 1999 Ford Taurus? And I was like, this is not a good car.
With engine trouble.
And like, what, a month later, the cylinder drops or something.
Two of the cylinders.
Two of the 6 cylinders.
The pistons, right.
And it could hardly go like 10 miles per hour up the hills.
My job required me to go up this very large incline on the highway, and I always have to put on the safety hazard lights and go in the far right lane, and my car literally wouldn't go more than 35 miles an hour up that hill.
And the heat didn't work in that car, so you had to wear blankets and gloves and wrap yourself up like a mummy every time you went in that car in the winter.
I even put a...
And you had to leave the windows open.
I had, because it would fog up.
Yeah.
From me being in the car.
Breathing, and it's so cold.
Yes. And it had a wicked oil leak. It burned oil. So I had to put oil in about every single week. A whole quart of oil.
And after that hard lesson, you learned that you should listen to your husband.
Yes. I bought it because I thought it was cute looking.
Right.
That's not a good reason to buy a car. Just FYI.
So that brings up a good point.
So, yes, it does bring up a good point. For someone as experienced as you, perhaps you know the answer to this. What does the ideal car look like?
So, my ideal used car, and this isn't a flashy car, it's not a Tesla, it's not a sports car. It's the ideal used car to get from A to B. That's what a car is there for. It's for transportation. And to get the best bang for buck, to not waste time on constant maintenance, constant repairs, constant fix-ups. You just want something that's going to take you through the long haul, take you, put in 100,000 miles and not have to do any maintenance. So what does that look like? For me, what I look for is a one-owner car. And those are kind of hard to find. But one-owner car, and has to have maintenance records. And I'm looking around a $5,000 ballpark range. And I know that's high for a lot of people who are buying used cars. But, I've found, that $5,000 mark seems to be around the best part. So if you have that, I'd say save up for that. And then you want to buy around 60,000 miles or lower. It wants to be a Japanese make. So Toyota, Honda, Nissan, all those kind of cars are great. And you want it to be a 4-cylinder subcompact car. Things like a Toyota Yaris, a Honda Fit, a Nissan Versa, Nissan Altima, Nissan Sentra,
All those Toyota Corolla, all those cars are great. And my personally, so 60,000 miles, Japanese, 4-cylinder, subcompact. So these are great gas mileage, but also a lot of these subcompact cars, brand new, they're $15,000 base. And 5 years later, or 6 years later, they've dropped down in price by a third. So from $15,000, you can buy them for $5,000. Sure, it takes some looking, but Sunri's car we bought 6 years later, for $3,000, and it only had 53,000 miles, I think.
Right, that was an incredible deal.
Yeah, that was the best deal I've ever bought, actually. And that's just some guy in New York City who was tired of transferring. He wasn't using the car, and every week, there's street cleaning, so he had to change it from one side of the road to the other side of the road. And he got tired of it. And then one day, it was winter, the car died because he hadn't been driving it, so the battery didn't charge, and it just died on him. He's like, I'm just listing this on Craigslist. So he listed on Craigslist. I met him. I was the first one into New York City. First one I was like, could this be a scam? It might be a scam, but I emailed him, sounded legitimate, and we got talking, and I bought the car for $3,000, and it was worth like $7,000. I could sell it, 6 years later now for $3,000 easy. And we put another 60,000 miles on that, or 100,000 miles on that car.
Yeah.
And that was such a good idea, good deal. He was an MIT graduate and just wanted to get rid of it.
So good tips there on your ideal car.
Right.
$5,000, like you said, does sound like a lot. Times have changed from when you first started investing in cars, and I guess at that point, perhaps there were more cars to be found at the $1,200, $700 range. Now it's hard to come by. I think.
Well, also, I just think those cars that you buy for $1,500, for $2,000, they're gonna need repairs after a while. They're not at that 60,000 mile mark. They're probably at like 120,000 mile mark.
So
they're
not a solid buy.
Yeah, they're 15 plus years old, so things break after time. And me, being someone who's very into time management and saving as much time as possible, I'm not buying the cheapest product only to spend countless hours repairing it. I want to buy something that's going to last and something I don't have to constantly worry about. These two cars that we bought, these 2009 cars, subcompacts, they have timing chains, so we don't have to worry about doing these overhauls on the timing belts. And all we've done is we replaced that battery like 3 years later on your car. My car, I think we replaced the tires at one point.
Replaced the tires.
Oh, we did replace the tires on yours, but this is going on 6, 7, 8 years, 9 years. Anyway, going on a while.
Long it's
so
been.
Really, it's just been maintenance. It hasn't been like any repairs. I think a muffler was on your car actually. We had to do something with a muffler.
I don't remember.
Maybe that was that car. But anyway, very minimal. So that's why I recommend this criteria. One owner, $5,000, 60,000 miles, Japanese, around 60 years old, and that 4-cylinder. And then I like to mention, get a hatchback. And the reason I love the hatchback is you can fit so much into a hatchback over a regular sedan. Like my hatchback, my little Toyota Yaris, I fit 8-foot 2x4s in there all the time. And we've put
Very versatile.
ovens, refrigerators, even all sorts, dishwashers, washer dryers, all sorts of things. So hatchbacks are great. We love them.
So you say you like subcompact cars. So I'm going to ask the question: have you ever, or what is the reason that you don't invest in vans, SUVs, and larger cars?
Well, again, we're trying to get the best bang for buck, and that includes, miles per gallon. And with a subcompact, you're going to get around the 40 miles per gallon mark. So that's great mileage. If you get a van, you'll get 20. So you get double that. An SUV also, you're probably hovering around 25 mile per gallon mark. And sure, maybe you can buy a Prius or a hybrid. But, hybrids have the batteries. So especially the older hybrids, a lot of them would only last 100,000 miles, and then you have to replace the batteries. And you get maybe 50 miles per gallon, so a little better than these subcompacts, but not much better. So this subcompact was this, maintenance-free headache, as opposed to a hybrid. Sure, you'll get higher miles per gallon, but you have all these additional headaches, all these additional things that could go wrong. So I'm thinking a simple car, something that'll get you A to B.
Great. Well, I feel like there was an immense amount of information here
Great advice. Very inspiring story.
Thank you.
Makes me want to run out and go buy cars now.
Don't do that.
But I'm not in that business. I'm in the house rental business. So let's not start anything else new. But that's a great journey that you've been through. Inspiring how you just got yourself started, starting selling glow sticks.
Right.
And all the way up to earning $20,000 of capital for you to invest in your college education. I mean, how inspiring is that? So I really appreciate this story. Thank you for sharing it. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode?
I think that was about it. I think it was good. Thanks for interviewing me. And I guess I just want to say, hey, we have, over $500,000 in net worth now, and we're still driving these, what people would call like clown cars. And it's just, a matter of what is your priority? What is important to you? Is it really buying that dream car, or is it buying your freedom? And you got to think, what trade-offs are you making? Do you really need to have that luxury car right this instant? Or can you make that sacrifice to wait, 10, 15 years for that and start optimizing your life towards a bigger purpose, a bigger goal? Like for us, it's that family freedom for you to stay at home with the kids, not worry about a car payment that might take away from that freedom, might require a dual income, and making those hard choices now to have an easier, more fulfilling life later. So I guess, especially around cars, that's a very centric topic where everyone's always thinking about their dream car and how much happier their life would be if they had it. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Maybe for some people it is. And, great to dream. And I'm not saying don't say no forever, but maybe it's worth that delayed gratification to wait a little while and prioritize your true dreams first.
Well, thank you. That's great advice. And thanks again. Awesome episode.
Awesome. And definitely check out faninvestor.com/cars. I did an excellent job writing the whole thing up. Very well laid out, and it'll give you a great start to finding your next car. Okay, guys. Good luck. Godspeed.